Welcome to Capitalizing Your Life, the podcast that shows you how to take control of your money, build lasting wealth, and create financial freedom using the infinite banking concept. If you're ready to make your cash flow work for you instead of someone else, you're in the right place. Here's your host, Glenn Yaney.
Today, my guest is Nate Dean, co-host of Cashflow Legends podcast. Welcome, Nate.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. And you're one of the first people that I have met and followed in infinite banking. I think I found you on Twitter and also, followed your Cashflow Legends podcast. And it's great to have you on.
Appreciate it. It's really fun. We were talking about this before we started recording about kind of looking back of our connection and how it was like, a year and a half ago that I was on your podcast for the first time.
Yep.
And you were just wanting to learn more about infinite banking and everything like that. And now fast forward, now we're colleagues, as authorized practitioners through the Nelson Nash Institute, which is really cool.
Yeah. And I know there's some things that when we did have the conversation about IBC, and it's funny because as you start to, my one thing that I've been thinking about recently is becoming your own banker. So the big thing is becoming, and really it's a process of understanding. And my beginning process was when I was just digging in, didn't even have a policy when you and I met, and I was just trying to understand it. And you brought up some stuff, and I don't think I was quite there yet is what happened. And then hindsight, I look back at our conversation because I knew that I think there was something about worrying about disability insurance or something like that. And I was just like, I don't need that.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, I think about our mentors that taught us about IBC to begin with. And one of the things that they shared with us, and you'll hear this in the IBC community, is infinite banking is caught more than it's taught.
Yeah.
And so we can come up with all these really great teaching tools and analogies and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, one of the things that we tell people, and it sounds weird when you say this, but you're not going to fully understand this until you start doing it.
Exactly.
So there is a certain amount of faith that is involved when you sign up for your first policy, because you don't fully get it yet.
Yep.
Because you don't fully get it until you take your first policy loan, until you see that policy loan show up in your life. Infinite banking is still really, it's tough to deal with and grasp, because most people, when they think about a loan in general, they automatically go negative when they think about a loan. They think about, oh, now that's something that I owe somebody else or something like that. We've never experienced what it's like to have a debt that we owe to ourselves. And that is a powerful process.
Yeah. I think what happened for me is I was so focused on returns, but I think once I got over the hump was when I put a value on actually the death benefit. And when I talk to people today, the biggest thing, it's not like you can teach somebody that there's a value of death benefit. It's just that you just have a life experience of something happening and you start to see that there's a value in death benefit. So, they see a lot of these policies structured to focus 100% on cash value, which we try to get as close to that number. But it's when you start seeing the 1090s and the, that are only focused on cash value, it turns into where we have to see that we're solving a problem. It's solving multiple problems, So that's really whenever I changed my thinking, I was like, okay, there's actually a death benefit here that you actually get no matter what, which gives you the permission to spend,
Well, absolutely. And without a death benefit, there is no premium to pay.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
And the other thing is we consider ourselves purists when it comes to the concept.
Yeah.
And so we stick very closely to Nelson's principles. And every time I say we, because I have a business partner, Brandon, and he and I, our journey was together on this, and I can tell more of my story later. But in the last 8 years since we've been teaching this concept and running our business, we can see the times that we got off track is when we got away from Nelson's principles. So I tell people all the time, I show up to these conversations with a lot of humility because we haven't always done it the right way.
Yeah.
But what we recognize is every time we've gotten away from those principles, it hasn't gone well.
Yeah.
And so Nelson was just, in his wisdom, he was so gracious to be able to share this gift of IBC with us and to share the book of IBC with us, because when we look at think long term, Nelson's number one principle.
Yep.
Well, somebody who is coming to a conversation going, hey, I want 90% access to my cash.
Yeah.
Well, you're not thinking long term. And also what people don't understand is when you shrink down the base of a policy, you create a lot of risk. If you don't have discipline in your life, you create a lot of risk on losing that policy altogether if you're not being a good banker. And what happens a lot of times, and I've seen this over the years, is people want those skinny base policies, those shrunk down base policies, because they want access to a lot of cash value. And then they go take their max policy loan on their cash value once it's available, and they never repay it. That's not becoming your own banker.
Yeah.
That's trying to compare it to all the other stuff out there that you can be doing. So, we've turned down business from people who insisted on policies being structured that way.
Yeah.
That violates our convictions. We can't do it.
So let's talk about the risks. You said, what are the risks besides pulling out 100% of the cash or not being able to pay the loans back? What other risk of like a 1090 policy?
Well, if you are not being a good banker, you're not repaying that policy loan, then the interest accrued on the outstanding principal that you have on your policy loan can fight against the cost of the policy, fight against the premiums or whatever. And so it can implode, so to speak, if you're not careful, if you don't know what you're doing.
Yep.
So anybody who's insistent on doing something like that, they're not going to do it with me. They might go do it with somebody else, but I'm going to do my best to try to educate people and help them understand exactly what the levers are on a policy. Because what most people miss is the fact that there are no deals in insurance. So every lever that you pull on a policy has an effect on the short-term or long-term impact of that policy.
Yeah, and that's a big part of thinking long range. You think it's like, when you said purist, it almost sounded like, to me, it was like there's other ways of doing it. So then you think to yourself, is being a purist a bad thing? It almost made it sound like a bad thing, but I would say it's only through education. And I could tell you what happened to me, just like with what you said. I got a policy and then I really started educating myself. I did a ton of work before understanding what we're doing, but then also I read about 20 books after. And then I started reaching out to my person, Nick, and I started asking him questions because I was afraid. I was like, did I get in a 1090? Or started figuring out that the risks of the 1090s. And I think it's, there's with the term writers dropping off, it creates bigger issues later on. And really, it's one of those things that the reason why I love the infinite banking concept and properly structured whole life insurance policies is because it's something that's repeatable. And there's guarantees, so it's guarantees as what I'm telling you is going to happen, but really inside the policy.
Yeah.
What happens outside the policy is on the banker themselves, so.
Yeah. One of the things that we tell people all the time is our strategies and what we're trying to create together are focused really on the 4 components of economic value. And that is certainty, control, liquidity, and efficiency. So when we're creating strategies together, we want to make sure that we are satisfying those things, because there are going to be some people who need more access to cash upfront because of the goals that they have or something like that. So policies can be structured a little bit different, but we're never going to structure it down or shrink it down to a point where it becomes risky. We have convictions about how we structure policies, and we don't violate those convictions. But it makes it really easy for us when we're working with someone. There's a theme or sort of a motto that we talk about often, which is let the work be the filter. And so Becoming Your Own Banker, the book, is a really great vetting tool for anyone who is serious about showing up to a conversation and talking to us. Because if you haven't done the work on your part to read and educate yourself, then there's not really a point in us having a conversation.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody wants to show up and just ask some questions, I'll answer some questions, but I'm always going to be pointing them back to the book at some point. Hey, if you want to keep learning, this is where you start. Once you had time to, write down some questions, once you've had time to read, let's get back together, get all your questions answered, and then show you what's possible.
And that also makes me think of, if you don't know the problem, you won't have the solution. Or you don't need a solution really, as if you don't have the problem. And I think that's really where you find people. And everyone's got something different. That's the good thing about, when you start talking to people, everyone's got a different, it's similar. We're trying to recapture interest in our life, but really we all have different goals and how we're going to get there.
Yep, for sure. And being able to meet people where they're at is really important. And we're fortunate enough in our practice to, have some resources, have some software and things like that where we can sort of map out and show people, is this going to create the value that they're looking for, ahead of time with their numbers and their situation, so they can kind of see, is this even the road that I want to go down? And if it is, that's great. And if it's not, that's okay too. We'll still be friends. We want to make sure that people just have a good foundation of understanding about what they're doing, what it is and what it's not. And I tell people this all the time. Like, if you have confidence in what you're doing, no matter what that is, if you have confidence in what you're doing, but specifically about infinite banking, confidence is where your excitement is going to come from. And excitement is where your success is going to come from in becoming your own banker.
Definitely. So we talked a little bit before the podcast about the unseen, and that's kind of, I think, what you were talking about with, once you start, it's like you start to really learn the process after you start. And that's kind of what they talk about as the unseen. So I guess if you could like give a couple examples of scenarios that you've seen like that.
So I think what it really boils down to more than anything else is the seen. So there's so many different layers to the seen and the unseen.
Yep.
So one layer of the seen value in IBC is being able to see, what's on an illustration, being able to see what your cash value is, being able to see your death benefit on your policy, all those things, all the things that you can actually see with your own eyes. The unseen, one aspect of the unseen is what kind of freedom and control do you now get to introduce into your life? What kind of certainty do you now get to introduce into your life? And that's why we talk about the economic value of certainty, control, because how do you even quantify the economic value of certainty and control? You can't. But once you experience it, you want more of it. The same thing with freedom. Once you taste a little bit of freedom, you just want another bite. So the unseen value of becoming your own banker, like the umbrella of all of it is, do you want more peace of mind in your life or less?
Hey guys, if you'd like to learn more about the infinite banking concept and how to flow your capital through your own financing system, my team and I are here to help. With over 35 years of experience, we can guide you in building a properly structured whole life policy tailored to you and your family. See the scheduling link below. Now, back to the show. Yeah, I literally just talked to somebody this morning about it. It's like we focus on this net worth thing, which I believe that's a byproduct of what we're trying to do here. It's, trying to create liquidity, cash flow, not cash flow through the policy, but really cash flow turns into the things that I invest in and put my money into to flow back into my policy that gives me the certainty, that liquidity gives me the bandwidth to be able to have more time with my friends, family, focusing on business ideas that might not make money on the front end, but is a long-term play that, that creates a lot of wealth, and that's,
Yeah.
and then the net worth comes, in my opinion, behind that. Like, it's just like when you buy a real estate property. I was literally talking to somebody today about this. I was like, if you focus on cash flow, then the value of the property will show up. He was looking at this one property that he said, well, it'll probably break even after I'm all done. And I'm like, well, that's not why we buy real estate. We try to build value. We might not make any money while we're getting it there, but we're trying to build the value. And once the value's there, then we can receive the cash flow.
Yeah.
And then the cash flow will show up in the price whenever you sell the property. So for us, we focus strongly on cash flowing assets, but it's like, what ends up happening is that the value of the property goes up a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And it might go down, the values go up and down through the federal interest rates going up and down, but it's all based on cash flow over that. Over those rates, it's all based on cash flow. So that's why, in my opinion, if we focus our own personal balance sheet and finances this way, we focus on, is this business a sustainable business? Is it going to be around? Is the cash flow good? Is the expenses low? Are they able to save capital to be able to go and do another deal? Like, what kind of business have I created in my own system? And that's really what, does it protect the downside? Those are the other parts of the business. Is it, if something happens to me and 3 months later, it all falls apart because I didn't have everything in place?
Yeah, it reminds me. So one of my friends, I don't know if you know him yet, but he's a colleague of ours, Michael Kwong.
Yeah.
Or I call him Mike. He wrote a book called Dibs on Your Money.
Yep.
And one of the things he talks about in the book is, what we are really trying to help people understand is that we can fight against this 40-40-40 system that almost everybody is a part of, which is you work 40 hours a week for 40 years of your life to retire on 40% of your income. And if you stop focusing on that accumulation model of trying to get to the point where you can live off the interest on something, but focus on creating cash flow, while you have more opportunities to create cash flow, while you're still a spring chicken, so to speak, then you get to remove a lot of the uncertainty later in life. Same reason why we love whole life insurance over universal life insurance is because universal life insurance creates uncertainty for people because there's an increasing cost of insurance over time and it's an unknown cost. Nobody even really knows what that cost is going to be. But whole life insurance has a diminishing cost of insurance. So we get to remove as much uncertainty as we can out of our life because the older we get, the more certainty we need, not less.
Yep.
And when going back to certainty, when you are operating inside of a system that has a predictable outcome, that gives you permission to make different decisions that somebody else might make.
It's literally like, in my opinion, it's the anchor to your finances. You have this thing that's holding you stable while you're taking the big risks in other areas of your life, which, earned income. I'm a big believer in investing in yourself. And a lot of people would say, oh, that's risky. You're going to spend whatever, $5,000 on a mastermind group, or you're going to spend maybe $20,000 on a business venture or something like that. But it's like when you have the liquidity and the control of the asset, it's like I have found myself, I'm willing to do what it takes to get to the next level. And compared to passively living our lives and putting it into the stock market, some people can do well there. But for me, I know that the stock market is really just giving my money to somebody else. And the action of doing that is like pretty much saying that somebody else knows how to take care of my money better than I do. And I would prefer to have the control myself.
Yeah, I posted about this on Facebook this morning. The 401k is not necessarily a broken system. It's just an incomplete system. It was never designed for that to be your only asset at retirement. It was never designed that way. In fact, the original intent was to pay bonuses to executives. But what the companies figured out is it was a way to incentivize the worker to remove the liability of the pension plan for those companies so that they didn't have to keep those liabilities on the books for years and years to come. And so this 401k system that so many people are a part of, what most people don't understand is at retirement age, if you have some sort of volatility buffer in your life that you can draw from in down years, if you're still subject to the traditional retirement accounts, the volatility buffer that you can draw from, specifically whole life insurance, is an absolute game changer.
Yep. Yeah. The 401k is one of those touchy subjects. I had 300,000 in my 401k, cashed it out, took the penalty.
Yeah.
I rolled it into real estate and was able to avoid taxes through depreciation. But I know not everybody's in the same situation.
Right.
But I believe that I got it from Killing Sacred Cows.
Mm-hmm.
I read that, and it was within 6 months I was already ready to get rid of my 401k. So,
well, since you said that, so Garrett's a business mentor of mine, Garrett Gunderson, who wrote Killing Sacred Cows.
Awesome.
And you were talking about net worth earlier. And when we're talking about certainty, predictability, all that stuff, it reminds me of something that Garrett says is the thing he loves about whole life insurance is the ability to buy his net worth ahead of time and build and grow into it simultaneously. That's such a beautiful thing that most people will never get to experience is, hey, let's take the guesswork out of what am I going to be able to create and leave to my family one day? Let's just take that off the table. And when we were talking earlier about rates of return, it is such a foreign conversation for almost everybody when you say this is not about rates of return. This is about controlling the banking function in your life. Because we are conditioned to believe that everything is about rates of return. And rates of return is just a comparison game. Because you really don't care what your rate of return is until you look at what somebody else is getting. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I could be doing better or whatever. But this is about controlling cash flow. It's about how can we create new levels of peace of mind in the money that's flowing through our life. And if you still want to go invest in other assets, you can do that. But if you do it through the lens of infinite banking, like you were talking about earlier with real estate and things like that, now you are hedging against some of the downside risk on your investments. But if you're experiencing upside on your investments, now you're increasing your upside because you control that capital now.
One of my first conversations with somebody about infinite banking, and they mentioned that it's not about the rate of return. I almost hung up on them. What are you talking about? There's no way we're not talking about rate of return. This is money that I have today. It's opportunity cost and all this other stuff. And I think that's when I really didn't, back to the not valuing the death benefit, because you are getting something for it.
Yeah.
You just don't.
Yeah. There's instant value for your money day one.
Yeah.
And, something that we share with people is if there was no cost to life insurance, how much would you own?
As much as I could.
As much as you could. Well, what if we could show you how you could recover the cost of your life insurance many times over throughout your lifetime? And they'll usually say, show me how that's possible. So we walk them through it and show them how it's possible. Because there is such a, when we're talking about human life value and what your lifetime economic value is, there's such a misconception about life insurance in general. Most people believe that you can buy as much life insurance as you can afford. It is not true. You can only buy as much life insurance as the insurance company is willing to offer you. And everybody has a different number.
Yeah. So back to that, the same thing is, it's amazing, like for the way that I structured mine, and I'm sure you're similar. We have a convertible term to get us to that insurable interest or that insurable, benefit. And it seems like a massive number, but what I would say, the other thing that I've like slowly started to understand is that like my mind only thinks linear. So I just think from point A to point B, how would I get there? So like if I have like a cash value of like $5 million when I'm 70 years old, like I think, what am I going to do if I have $5 million lent out? But the one thing it would be is that I've lent that money out probably 10 times before I'm 70, and it's come in and out of my system.
Yep.
And now I have velocity of capital that's coming in and out. So if I have 5 million lent out, it's going to mean I have 20 to 25 million of assets outside of my policy.
Yes.
Because it's cycling in and out,
Yeah, that goes back to the seen and unseen. So
Yeah.
that's a great point. So the seen is what you're going to be able to create long term.
Yep.
Just based off of your cash value. The unseen is what else have you been able to go create outside the policy? That is the unseen. And if you've been a good banker and you have done a really good job of educating yourself in the assets that you're a part of, the value you've created outside the policy probably far exceeds the cash value in the policy.
And really, the crazy part about that is when you see that, I could tell you that that policy, the insurance cost, which is what I call the capitalization cost, was $28,000. But we're talking about long-term thinking. So we have
Think long term.
It's like, what is 28,000 to 5 million? And then we also have this other, that's just the cash value, not considering the death benefit. We no longer, once you get past the capitalization phase, you're technically no longer, well, you are technically paying for insurance, but you're no longer having the capitalization costs that we're talking about, the buildup of cash value.
Yep. Yeah, we talk about that breakover point, sort of the mark of efficiency that we see that takes place on a policy. So like if your cost of insurance was $28,000, you were able to calculate that, and you and I both know how to calculate that. What is your expected death age? Like in an ideal scenario, what age do you expect to pass away one day?
121.
120. Okay, you want all the death benefit.
Yeah, I want the check at the end of it.
You want the check. All right. So
make it a taxable event.
Let's
Why
say
not?
let's say that doesn't happen.
Okay.
Let's say the average life expectancy right now is like, what, 76 for a man? Something like that.
Okay.
Now, I feel like I'm in pretty good health. I feel like I'm probably going to live longer than that. So 76 minus your age is how many? I don't remember how old you are.
I'm 40.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's easy numbers. So we divide that by 36. That means your average cost of insurance over your lifetime is $780 a year. And if we looked at age 76, you would have multi-millions in death benefit.
Yes.
And multi-millions in cash value. So would you pay, if we were looking at that, I would ask somebody, would you pay $780 a year for all these guarantees? They're like, I'd pay way more than that for those guarantees.
Yeah.
But what most people don't realize with their term insurance that they have is eventually they're no longer going to qualify for it. Either they can't afford it or they're too old for it. And so if you have the ability to create a permanent death benefit that is equal or greater than your estate, now you have permission to enjoy your assets in a different way without disinheriting anyone at some point, because it's all going to be replenished one day.
There's two people right before I got my policy that died, and I think they were around 80, just over 80. And once they died, their financial situation changed. And you would think if you're at 80, then it shouldn't be that way. But in my opinion, this is how we get to this buy term and invest the difference. Life happened for these people. It wasn't like they're not bad people. They weren't like reckless. They didn't seem reckless with their expenses. It was just that they died and they didn't there was nothing, no additional like death benefit or anything. So they had to change their lives over that. And I think to myself, if that happens at 80, what would happen at 40? It's not like it's going to change. So the big thing is just that's whenever I started valuing the death benefit. When I saw that, I was like, it's going to matter when I'm 80. It's going to matter. It's going to matter definitely today. And then even when I'm 80. So we're thinking long-term legacy, also a permission to spend. Like we have this nest egg of capital that's going to be given to my estate, however I want it to go. But really it's going to be more on like with the current capital that I have on hand, I'm able to use it the way I'd like to use it. And that's the other part of becoming your own banker,
Yeah, I heard it said this way recently that if you plan properly and you have the right amount of death benefit, you're capturing your human life value, you can make up to your family all the financial mistakes you made in your lifetime because of that windfall.
Yeah.
And something else that's really interesting, there's so many different things that are running through my head right now, but something else that's really interesting is when you are financially underwritten on a policy, they don't look at your net income, they look at your gross income. See, we live off of our net income, but they will underwrite off of our gross income, which means the taxes that we're paying to the government right now, in a way, can be refunded back to our family one day.
Definitely.
Yeah, man. Like I said, there's just so many different thoughts running through my head right now. I told you I woke up early this morning. I've had a lot of coffee. I'm wired.
Awesome. So where can people find you?
Well, you mentioned earlier that we have our own podcast, Cash Flow Legends. And if you search up Cash Flow Legends and you don't find us, it's because there's a Z at the end, not an S. We decided to add a little flair to the name. So Cash Flow Legends is our podcast. You can find me on Facebook, Nate Dean. You can find me on Twitter, Nate Dean on Twitter, or X now.
You're the most popular person on Twitter that talks about IBC. Because if you look up IBC, your name is one of the first names that come up.
Yep. I haven't been very consistent lately posting on Twitter just because we've been so busy with other aspects of our business. But it is something that I want to get back in the habit of posting content and things like that. In fact, I'm working on an article right now that I'm going to post on my profile. And it goes back to a framework that we have developed that we help walk people through. And essentially there's 3 money problems that everybody faces in their life. And I'm not going into great detail on these, but the first one is the legacy problem. The second one is the financing problem. And the third is the cash flow problem. And so what we do is we show people how solving those 3 money problems in your life, and everybody experiences those at some level, solving those 3 money problems, we can turn those money problems into a masterpiece.
Awesome. When does that come out?
Well, the ebook's already out right now. So if somebody want to go check it out, you could go to 3mpbook.com and check it out. And there's a place where you can schedule a call if you find value in the information. I would love, if anybody goes and checks it out, I would love to just get a message on, hey, what's your feedback on this? Did it speak to you in any way? Did it resonate with you? Whatever. So yeah, you can go to 3mpbook.com, 3M for money, P for problems. Those 3mpbook.com, and you can check that out. It's about a 10-minute read. It's not anything crazy, but I think it does a really good job of highlighting the issues that people are facing, the pain points that people have in their life, whether they realize their pain points or not.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Nate.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Capitalizing Your Life podcast. Please rate, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share with someone who you think would enjoy listening.